Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to the next interview of Final Cut. Today, I'm joined by a man who, as far as Canada goes, should be considered more of a national treasure than Ryan Reynolds. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Immanuel.
Thank you for that hyperbolic introduction. I appreciate it. I
Hi.
appreciate it.
Just a quick question. Have you had someone sing or had all of Canada sing in tribute to you or not? Because
It's not happened.
it felt like Ryan Reynolds literally had the entirety of Canada sing a song for him.
Yeah. Well, people love him in Canada because he is super talented and has done so much, but he also has a reputation as a really good man who's, proud of where he's from and just seems like a straight shooter. But no, I haven't had, I think the last time I had a number of people sing for me might have been my 10th birthday. So it's been a while.
It has been a while. I think it's a bit long overdue. Just before we begin, you actually were in Highlander TV series going on near enough 30 years ago, I believe it was,
Yeah.
starring Adrian Paul. But are you a Duncan MacLeod fan or a Connor MacLeod fan?
I'm sorry, but I don't even know at this point. Excuse me, that was so long ago. I don't know what kind of fan I am. I have good memories of shooting that though. I
Yeah.
remember, being a young actor, really ambitious, and the part I played was some sort of beat poet who's doing, I guess it's a flashback into the 50s in New York.
Mm.
And I was doing spoken word poetry in some little basement. And then somehow I ended up on a rooftop for a sword fight with with the man himself. And it was an exciting job, when you're just getting started and you get to be on a show that's really popular and has a following and get to actually do something. I have great memories of that, but I don't have the vernacular to talk about that show as a fan, more of as a performer. I have nothing but good memories of that.
I'll be brutally honest. I haven't seen Highlander the series, but I
Mhm.
am more of a Duncan MacLeod fan than I am a Connor MacLeod fan.
So forgive me, but these are two completely different guys who were both the Highlander.
Yes, they were, but they had different traits because Connor MacLeod's was kind of like I actually because I've seen three of the Highlander movies. I've seen the first one with Clancy Brown, the second one which just kind of was more like a what if, and the third one with I think it's Mario Van Peebles, I think it was. And in the first one, I always remember thinking, is this guy supposed to be a Highlander? Is he supposed to be a chosen one, or is he just supposed to like run away from everything? Whereas I was always under the impression that Adrian Paul was, quite tough, quite a martial artist.
Mhm.
So mine would always be Duncan MacLeod because with Connor MacLeod, you were kind of like, is he going to kick my ass or is he going to run away from me? But with
Oh.
Adrian Paul's reputation alone, he could
Mhm.
literally kick your ass and you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't think anything else.
Yeah, he seemed quite Tarzan-like to me,
Hmm.
like a bit wild and just a big, wild man with long hair and big shoulders is my recollection.
Yeah, and the other reason I choose Duncan over Connor is because Sean Connery was supposed to be a Spaniard, but he spoke Scottish.
Well, we'll forgive him because, he's Sean Connery.
Yeah. But I do say I must admit, no, that's not the best one
Yeah,
actually.
not bad, not bad. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, well, last time I tried to do an impression of Sean Connery, everyone was like, "No, that's no good."
Yeah,
On a
no,
good day, I can actually do a really good impression, but unfortunately, today's not that day.
sometimes a little warm up is needed, isn't
Yeah, definitely.
it?
Right. Singers will quote, say, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, etc., for inspiration for getting them into singing. So, as far as movies and TV goes, who are your inspirations?
Well, very early inspirations. Sometimes as a kid, you might see a performance or a movie, something that kind of just shakes you up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Something shook me up really young about the Wizard of Oz. Have you seen the classic Wizard of
We're on
Oz?
about the 1931, aren't we?
Yeah, 19, I
Yeah.
guess 39, I think it was. And that wicked witch and her flying monkeys just scared the crap out of me. Just really did. And I really wanted, watching that movie, I really wanted Dorothy to get back home and get away from that witch. and I was really pulling for it. I just remember as a really small kid being affected by that story, and so sometimes it's not just being affected by performers, like the singers you're mentioning. Yeah, they have their inspirations, but it's also the actual songs, right? The songs that kind of get right into your soul. So the Wizard of Oz shook me up when I was a kid, and I kind of reacted to the music too.
Yeah.
I felt, the just the intensity of some of that music and the longing and the power of some of that music. And then as I got older, some of the things that really affected me were uh, Paul Newman and Robert
What a
Redford.
guy. What a guy.
In Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I remember seeing that when I was quite young and watching it in the theater with my parents and then going, I want to go again right now. Like we saw the movie, it ended, and I said, I want to see that again right now. I wanted more of those guys. So there was something about, it was a cowboy movie, but they were real guys.
Hmm.
And they weren't superheroes and they weren't, like John Wayne or something. They were real guys. And something appealed to me about that. And then getting a little older, there was a film called, around the same time, maybe, American Graffiti, George Lucas's first film. And they were real people to me. I remember watching that movie and going, wait a minute, what's going on here? These are real people. It's not like a phony story, right? So those were some of the films and the tones of the films that really affected me and still affect me to this day. As far as performers go, loved Elvis as a kid.
Brilliant.
Elvis was the man, and in my grandmother's basement, there was a big stack of 45s that were my mom's from the 50s. So I still have some of them around. I remember listening to those records and pretending to be Elvis. And, that's a tall order. It's hard to pull that one off. Even what's his name? He did his best. Yeah. But I really remember just going, that guy's so cool. And that guy's there's something about connecting to his intensity. And then definitely, in my era, Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, I related to those guys because I was a little guy, right?
Yep.
I'm the same size as those guys. And I love their intensity. And part of my family is from New York. So I related to the New Yorkness about those guys. I love the humor of Pacino and Hoffman. Everything they did, no matter how intense it was, especially Hoffman, there was always humor in it.
Yeah.
So those were the guys that kind of affected me more as I was getting into performing and acting. And I loved, he's in trouble now, so we can't really celebrate him. But Woody Allen was a big inspiration because I just, again, loved his intensity and his wit and his point of view. I really kind of got behind that sort of intelligent but neurotic point of view. I liked the vulnerability. And there was Richard Pryor, loved Pryor's vulnerability. I guess I was just really drawn to the ones that made things feel real to me. And I continue to be. Those guys still, De Niro, Hoffman, Pacino, I guess those were the big ones for me growing up. And it's pretty amazing to see them all, still working and still turning in great performances. Yeah.
So, regards as to your career, what have been the highlights?
Well, making films has definitely been the most gratifying thing for me. I love being in a position to tell a story that has specific personal resonance for me. Some things that come to mind are my first film, which was called Moving Malcolm, did that in 2003, traveling around to film festivals and ending up in Calcutta, or Kolkata as it's called now, and showing the film at the Kolkata International Film Festival. That was a surreal experience. It's just like 1 minute I'm in Vancouver here, beautiful Vancouver in Canada. The next minute I'm in this old sort of crumbling ancient movie theater in Kolkata showing the film to an all, Bengali audience. And it was amazing. I felt like I was in Indiana Jones or something. And just seeing the way the film affected people and hearing them laugh at the film, that was an amazing experience. When you can combine your career with life lessons, just with opportunities that come from that. We traveled around the area a bit. We met they took us to Mother Teresa's mission, and
Really?
we met the woman who took over for Mother Teresa, and that was something I never expected to do, and that was just, just very unexpected feelings and ideas coming up around that. So I just love it. That was a big one. My next film was called Downriver, showing that film, different festivals around the world, winning awards with that film. The awards are nice just because sometimes you just go, okay, thank you for paying attention, right? Like just when somebody you just like we all performers, artists, we want to be noticed. It's not always about like going, look at me, look at me. It's more about going, thank you. I'm glad you actually saw how hard I tried, right? Um, there was a really great moment for me showing that film, I think in San Jose, where I was going up an escalator after the screening in a shopping center with
Yeah.
my wife, who's in the film, Jennifer Spence. Some sci-fi fans would know Jennifer from a bunch of shows she's on. And we are going up an escalator after the screening. And as we were going up, a guy was coming down and he saw Jen, who was in the movie, and he pointed at her and he went, Akiko Uno, Akiko Uno. And that was her character's name in the film. And for some reason, that experience really stuck with me because of the way the guy lit up when he saw her. He saw her as a real person. That character, Akiko Uno, as a real person. That meant a lot to me, connecting with an audience on that level. So those are highlights in terms of making my own films, working with people I love and my close friends and collaborators. And then in terms of, I've been lucky and got to be on a lead character or a member of the lead ensemble on some TV shows and some other films that have played around the world. So there's a lot of stuff, Dean. When I was younger, the excitement of like being on the red carpet at the Toronto International Film Festival, in a film called Last Wedding, we were the opening film of the whole festival. So that was a really big deal. Sort of like the international focus is on whoever opens that festival. And being on that red carpet and having reporters from all over the world kind of calling out our names and photographers and, yelling for photos and asking questions with really heightened excitement. That was fun. I'm glad I got to do that. I'm glad I got to experience that feeling, but it's definitely not what I live for now. What I live for now is more the satisfaction of a job well done as opposed to, the spotlight.
Yeah, fair enough. When you look back on your career, is there any decisions that you think maybe if I chose this differently instead of what I actually went with?
Constantly, every decision we make affects us for the rest of our lives. I lived in Los Angeles between 97 and 2000 or so. And I came back to Vancouver to get to work on my own film, my first feature, Moving Malcolm, that I wrote and directed. And who knows, if I'd stayed in Los Angeles, my life could have gone in a very different direction, but then I wouldn't be with my wife. I wouldn't have my acting studio here in Vancouver that I've had for 20 years that I love. It's my home base. I wouldn't have so many different relationships, but other great things could have happened, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think there's, every moment in our lives, it's amazing how much hangs in the balance, doesn't it? What we decide to do.
Uh-huh.
Again, getting to be an old timer, been in this business for over 30 years, it becomes, for me, certainly no time to look back. Life's too short to look back. You got to like live in the moment and embrace it. Yeah.
I always prefer racing drivers because they just don't think about what if, they just get on with it.
Racing drivers.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, if you're going 200 mile an hour, you can't
Yeah.
really think about what if I go into the
Right.
side here and someone
Right.
turns in at me. You just think, right, I'm going to go for that no matter what. I'm not going to second guess myself. I'm going to do it. If I crash, I crash.
That's life for sure. If we crash, we crash. Yeah. Don't want to be too safe, right? But also, you got
You
to
don't want to
like
crash and burn either.
keep your wits about you. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in the process of finishing a movie called Have Hope Yo. I believe, have
Mhm.
I pronounced that last bit right? I just want to make sure that I have.
Yeah. That's the title of when I was about 10 years ago, I was walking up a street here in Vancouver and with my wife, and there was a big billboard,
Uh-huh.
and somebody had spray painted over the billboard, "Have hope, yo." and have hope, yo, with an exclamation mark. And I don't know, it made us laugh, it made us feel good, and I took a picture of her, and I've always remembered that. And in making this film, which is inspired by an ensemble of characters getting through the pandemic and getting on with their lives in this changed world we now live in, I thought that's a good title. And there's a scene in the film that involves some graffiti, and I thought that would be a good title. But Dean, people, I'm not sure if that's going to be our title because it's split. Some people just go, "What? That's a stupid title. What does that mean?" Some younger people have said it sounds corny. Like they don't feel that their generation relates to that. They think it sounds kind of just not cool. And I'm not trying to be cool for people, but I also, titles are important. So some people love that title, and it seems to be the younger people just kind of go, I don't know, right? Young people these days, um, is a certain amount of cynicism,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
And a title like that seems to have such a positive message that I think the immediate reaction that I've been hearing from some younger people is cynicism. So we got to figure it out. That project was originally called Trigger Me because, these days everybody's talking about being triggered, triggered, triggered.
Trigger happy.
Trigger happy, yeah. And that's not bad. And now I'm looking at the title Not Burning Out. Not Burning Out, because our composer for the film, Adrian Glenn, a fantastic singer-songwriter, he sent me a song recently called Not Burning Out. And I thought, well, isn't that what we're all trying to do right now?
Yeah.
In life, even if we're young or if we're, not so young, we're trying not to burn out in this world that takes its toll. All the constant barrage of information and deception and lies and tantalizing possibilities that seem to be out there, and it's just burning us out. It's too much. It's just like, just don't want to burn out. So maybe Not Burning Out's a cool title. I don't know. What do you think? Trigger Me, Have Hope, Yo, Not Burning Out.
Have faith.
Have faith. Just call it Have Faith.
Why not?
Because people would go like, this is some kind of Christian fundamentalist movie. And,
yeah, there is that. Yeah.
But faith is definitely the message. That's kind of been the message of all the films I've made, which is just stick with it and try to get through challenges in life, like in a way you kind of got to accept it, but you got to keep going. I mean, isn't that the message with everything? And is sci-fi is one of your favorite genres? Yeah,
it is. But it's one of my favorites, along with horror.
Isn't the message in most of those films sci-fi, have faith that we can save the planet, that we can save a civilization, that we can get this ship back to Earth, that we can conquer this species who's trying to kill us? Isn't it all about having faith?
You could say that, yeah. Or have faith that we will endure this invasion.
Right.
And we will drive them out. Independence Day, prime example of that. Bill Pullman's speech is literally about faith.
It's amazing that people have faith, isn't it? Because you're just born into this world with so many obstacles, and you just, what choice do you have? You gotta have faith. You gotta keep going. So if films can inspire people without hitting them over the head with the information, that's definitely part of my goal as a filmmaker.
What was that speech that Sly Stallone gave? Gave his son in Rocky V, where he says it's not about the amount of times you can get hit, it's about how many times you can get hit and get back up.
That's the truth. When I was a kid, before I got into the whole world of kind of show business, I was an amateur boxer.
Really?
Yeah, I did that really competitively for a number of years and fought in the Canadian junior nationals here. And that teaches you some lesson. And it's true. It's like, it is about getting back up. Some of the best advice I ever got, I've mentioned this in a number of interviews because I thought it was great. When I was about 12 or something, I was fighting this same kid named Randy Galler. Fought him 3 times. He beat me every time. He was a tougher, stronger kid, wanted it more. And after the third time he beat me, I went across the ring to his coach to kind of shake hands. And I said to his coach, "What's your secret?" His coach said, "No secret, son, hard work." And that's a good lesson for a kid to learn, right?
Mm.
So, as an acting teacher myself, I meet a lot of people who are looking for that sort of secret. And there really is no secret. You just got to find the right person to work with and put in the hard work, right? And that's the secret. But it's the toughest, it's the secret nobody wants to learn because putting in the hard work is
It's too
takes time.
hard.
For many people it is, but not everyone.
Podcasting wise, I've been doing this for years. I've put in so much hard work, and every day or every interview, podcast, still as rewarding as my first one.
Oh, that's great. Well, I really appreciate that you take the time to think out all those questions that are in, they can pull information out of people, but they're also fun because I like that balance in everything I do. I don't want to. Judy Dench says one should take their work very seriously, but not themselves too seriously. And I think that's the sweet spot, right? To be
I'm not going
very
to argue with Dame Judy Dench. I
yeah,
am
no,
not. I might
you
argue
won't.
with her over some things, but I'm not going to argue with her over that.
No, you won't win that argument.
Definitely not with a Dame. It's like, right, the Dame has spoken. You are not allowed to say anything meaning against her. Okay, I won't bother.
Exactly.
I'll just admit defeat.
Exactly.
So going back to what you're working on,
Mhm.
the film with multiple working titles, we'll say.
Yeah.
You actually did this with Westworld executive producer Richard Lewis, which I was quite shocked at. Not
Yeah.
the fact that he's actually got involved, but it's like Jesus Christ, he's got a member of who was on Westworld. I'm like, bloody hell.
Yeah. Well, that's very helpful, to have the film business. There's so many different kind of levels of influence and power and connection making. And Richard is someone who he's originally from Canada. I've known him for quite a while, and we've always wanted to work together and got along and had a laugh together. And we've tried to find the right project to work on.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, when I shot my original footage for this project in October of 2020, so it was still pretty heavy COVID-y
Yeah, still
lockdown.
was.
And so, of course, we were all wearing masks. I don't think we didn't have access to tests then. So in order to get a COVID test, then you had to, make an appointment and get a thing. And it was like a big production. You couldn't do home testing then. So it was pretty tense, but fortunately, no one on our little tiny crew got COVID. We went and shot a bunch of stuff, cut together a little trailer, showed it to Richard just for fun to show him what I was working on. He said, I want in. I want in. I want to work. I love this. I want to work on this. And what Richard's always said about my work, which I appreciate, is he says it's without artifice. He, works in a lot of different genres of
Yeah.
like crime drama type shows and Westworld. And these are shows that are kind of a heightened reality. The stuff I do, we try to make it feel just like real life with a compelling narrative and a compelling emotional narrative. Yeah. So he said he wanted in. So he jumped on board as an executive producer and started connecting some dots and hooked us up with a big company here. We tried, and originally we're going to do this as a web series.
Yeah.
A company got on board and said, let's pitch this as a TV series. We
Uh-huh.
started pitching it. And what we learned is nobody wanted a show about COVID during COVID.
Yeah.
And we thought, and I still believe, well, that's exactly when you need it, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's deal with what's really going on. But I think we were just a little bit behind the curve because there was, especially in Canada, it's a more cautious, hesitant industry. There's not as nearly as much money. There's less production. In the States, I can't remember the name of the show, but somebody banged out a COVID show real fast and put it
Yeah.
on the air on a major network. And it was not that great, but they did what they could
Yeah.
really fast. So it was one season, right? One quick season, it was gone, but it kind of gave people something. Anyway, we tried to sell the show. People said, no, we like this. We like the show, but we don't want to do something about COVID. Because if we're still in it, no one wants to watch it. They want to escape into fantasy. And
Mm.
if we're out of it, nobody wants to watch it because they don't want to go back. So we said, well, it's not really about COVID. It's more about these characters and what's going on in their lives. And COVID is sort
Yeah.
of, the vessel. And they said, yeah, it's about COVID. He said, if people are wearing masks and people are isolated and people are Zooming, this is what the audience is going to see.
It's more of a psychology more than anything.
That's
Because
that.
because it was unprecedented because I've been alive. I've just turned 40. 2020 was the first time I'd ever experienced anything like it, and I bet
Yeah.
that's the same for millions of people. So, but I don't know if you were the same. I don't know if anyone listening was the same, but I was actually all right during COVID because I'm actually a gamer, and we gamers are prepared for something like this our entire lives. It's just like, right, we'll
Right.
just do what we keep on doing, and we'll be happy.
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
yeah, but I will say a few things. It was the worst time because I think the summer before it had absolutely peed it down over here in England. When we had COVID, it must have been the hottest 3 months on ever, and it was kind of like, oh my god, I want to go outside and get some fresh air. No, you can't.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's pretty strict, wasn't it?
Yeah,
You allowed like one walk or something in your neighborhood or
something like that. Yeah. Well, I don't even think we were allowed that. I think if I remember correctly, you could only go out if it was really necessary. I do. The one thing I do remember is that petrol and diesel was so cheap when we were
mm,
actually allowed to go out, whereas
mm,
now it's back to its record highs.
wow. Yeah, we all have strong memories about that. And my belief and hope is now is the time we can tell that story 3 years
Yeah,
later. We can look back and people are okay, let's have a laugh about that or connect on our shared struggle.
yeah,
So what we did with this film is so uh the first part of the film takes place in 2020 over the first wave of
yeah,
COVID, which here in Canada was essentially March, April, May, June. And it was around June going into July that they said, okay, we're going to start going back out now. You can take off your masks if you want to. And, a lot of us really believed, okay, we're out of this thing.
yeah,
Um, and of course, we're still in it. And then the film cuts ahead to 2023, and we see how this has impacted these people, how it's changed their lives, what they've been through, and how they came out the other side. And I think it works. And I'm really looking forward to getting it out there. We find we have a sense of humor about it, but we're not kind of making fun of anyone. We're kind of with everyone in their struggles.
yeah,
And what it was for me, it wasn't even COVID as much as the story I was telling, but I was teaching online acting classes during COVID. And I've got this studio in Vancouver, Haven Acting Studio. I've opened it 20 years ago. So
happy anniversary.
thank you very much. And I had never thought about teaching online, never considered it, never considered FaceTime coaching. If somebody was out of town and they wanted a coaching, I'd always say, yeah, let's just talk on the phone. I always didn't, wasn't familiar and comfortable with these kind of conversations. But
Mm.
during COVID, I accepted it really quickly and said, hey, we're connecting. This is good. People need to connect, and we'd see students would come onto these Zooms and they're alone in their little apartments, and it was surprisingly impactful and kind of vulnerable and intimate to see people in their homes. So, in addition to working on scenes and acting, the tricky thing, of course, as you know, is on Zoom, you can't make eye contact.
Not really, because we don't know. We can see where everyone is, but at the same time, we're not sure. I mean, if I've actually got my PC next to a window. When the sun's coming out, all you can see
Yeah.
is light blaring off my eyes. So, with that,
Right.
with that being said, it is more difficult, like you said.
Yeah. I'm looking into the lens, right, into the camera. So it's
Yeah,
kind of like for people watching, I'm sort of making eye contact with you, but I can't look at you at the same time. So that's tricky for actors. I
yeah,
remember saying during a class once, saying, hey, this is actually really working. It's not so difficult to do it this way. And an actor said, yeah, but like you're watching, for us, we're trying to connect.
yeah,
Because for me, as a director, doing acting on Zoom is just kind of like directing when you're looking at a monitor and composing a shot and watching the actor. But for actors, it's different. But still, we can connect a lot. And the things that came up for me I put them into the movie because as COVID bubbled up, so much sociological stuff bubbled up in the world, right? Um, One of those things was race, because one of my students, her name's Favor Onwuka, she was in class with me the day after George Floyd got killed.
Yeah.
And she was the only Black person in class. So we have six, or I guess eight of us on screen and Favor. And how do you handle that, right? As a white
Yeah.
as a white guy, what do I have to say? What does she want to say? What does everyone want to say?
Yeah.
Very potent, difficult situation, and very, resonated deeply and left a lot of questions about what's our various place in those discussions, right? And everybody was trying to get it right, weren't we? Everybody, on social media, everybody was like, Black Lives Matter, and standing and making a statement or not making a statement. And it's so, you can't please everybody. You can't get it right, no matter how much your heart's in the right place.
Yeah.
It's so hard to know what to do. So that's one of the stories we ended up telling in the film. Another story was gender. A student of mine, Elliot Ramsey, is he identifies as he or they.
Yeah.
He refuses to kind of say if he's non-binary or gay or queer, but Elliot was so articulate and so willing to listen and so non-reactive in discussions about gender that I said, this is really important. I want to tell this story. So I put his character into a relationship with a total party bro. I don't know, in England, say bro, what is it, a yob? A yob, somebody who just likes to have a good time and drink and kind of act.
No, yobs are kind of the ones who, if you basically cause carnage.
Okay. This guy's more of a party guy.
I'd probably say a party guy then.
Yeah. So we have this very articulate character who's stuck in lockdown with this semi-inarticulate party guy who just wants to smoke weed and drink beer. And so they're like the odd couple, and we put them together. And there's a lot of, real truth and humor that comes from them trying to figure each other out. And then the third character was a student of mine who told me she wanted to be a TikTok star. And that right away gets my back up, right? Because social media to me is just don't understand it, and I see so much artifice. I meet people in real life and I go, I like this person, and then I see them on social media and go, I don't like this person.
But totally different.
I don't understand what they're like. Who are they? But for me, I want to drop my judgment, and just understand, learn, accept. I don't know. So I told this story in the film of this young woman who wants to be a social media star and learn about what's driving her unfulfilling relationship with her mother and her need for affirmation. She tries to get it through social media and takes it really, really far to try to, get those unfulfilled needs. So these three stories were things that I didn't really know what to do and how to talk. And so you kind of let the characters speak for themselves, right? So I did a lot of interviews and let the characters, the actors, say, what do you want to say? What's important to you here? And gave them all writing a story consultant credit. So they're credited for their contributions. And then I took the interviews and, wrote these scenes, and they always got final word. It was always like, if you don't like anything, don't say it. If you need to change anything, change it. So those were our three characters, and what holds them all together is a therapist. That's the common link, a therapist who's doing Zoom, because, therapy got therapists were much in demand during COVID.
Oh, yeah, they were.
People really needed to talk out their stuff, right? And then the added character was me, because I play the documentarian who's trying to make a documentary about all this and trying to tell the story of lockdown and interview these people. But then lockdown was supposed to be 2 or 3 weeks, and it turns into months and months and months. And this guy just can't afford to keep going and can't keep filming. So it kind of becomes one of the stories is the struggle of this guy. So I combined a lot of things that were really going on. And we're just starting to edit the film now. I think it's going to be a good little film. I think we'll find our place. I think it'll be popular in festivals, and hopefully we can find our way on to some good international streamers and people will get to see the film. You never know, but the important thing to me is to tell the story.
Um, Obviously, it'll engage with the mental side of the pandemic. How much research was done as far as people's mental health went to make sure it was accurate?
Well, the research that I was most interested in was speaking to the specific characters about the truth of their situations.
Yeah.
The research that went into what the therapist had to say in her interviews about mental health. There was a fair amount of research, but it wasn't difficult. It's all out there, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
it's there's you can just go to YouTube and hear countless interviews about people speaking, very specifically, statistically about mental health during COVID, different demographics, different ages, and how it's affected them. There's so much information out there. But as a filmmaker, I try to draw from people I know and from my own life. And I have a great therapist that I've been going to since I was, I don't know, in my 20 years or something, helping, who I've always had someone to talk to about family stuff and career stuff. So just being inspired by her, I just always feel like I could tell stories for the rest of my life just based on the things that are in my immediate vicinity.
Yeah.
Right. Certain types of films, of course, need research, and it's integral that you know what you're talking about on a deeper level than just, our own small kind of point of view. But certain films, yeah, you just kind of write from the heart, right? People say, write what you know. And in this case, I kind of knew enough. I'm not super interested in telling the story of COVID in terms of vaccinations and masks and taped off areas and those kind of details. I don't care. What I'm interested is in the psychology and the emotional life of the individual characters.
Hmm. To be honest with you, I could ask everything else. I've already been, but I think you've pretty much covered everything I was going to say.
Okay, good.
So the inevitable question: how long will it be?
How long will?
How long will it be before we get a release date?
Oh, we'll see. We'll see. This is independent filmmaking, so we're going to first we got to put the film together and edit it, and then the applications start for festivals, and then the sales. So, it's not a Hollywood blockbuster where they have a release date. It's a film like we get this thing out as soon as we can. There's such a. Would you say? Do you have favorite, for example, sci-fi films that are smaller films that are made independently that resonate with you on the same level of the giant, super huge budget ones?
Sci-fi can't. Well, I would, if you're gonna, I want to say because Aliens was actually done for a modest budget compared to like a lot done at the day. I actually prefer. Sometimes I prefer lower budget ones. To be honest, I mean, as far as picking out a sci-fi one, my mind is a blank. However, I
Mm-hmm.
just need to bring up Sam Raimi's Evil Dead, made for
Mm-hmm.
God knows how much. Halloween was made for
Right.
$300,000. Friday the 13th was made for $500,000. Gareth Evans' The Raid, by the look of it, was probably made for a couple of 100,000. But yeah, I prefer those ones.
So, and so the journey for a low budget films is very different than it is for the big ones, right? If you
Definitely.
have if you have a movie star or someone who, has a big following, you can pre-sell your film.
Yeah.
And sort of start to plan into the future a bit more. If you just have a fantastic cast who aren't movie stars or aren't movie stars yet, it's a very different journey. So I'm very comfortable kind of speaking about the truth of independent filmmaking and not trying to come across like some hotshot Hollywood guy because it's a very different life, right?
It is, definitely.
Working in independent film is really about keeping the faith, as we talked about earlier, the faith that you're going to get your film out in front of an audience. And the most important thing is, telling the truth, telling your authentic story. It's a risk for sure. risky life, but it's all a risk, no matter how big the budget. People will always say they don't have enough time, they don't have enough money, they don't have enough resources. It's just the nature of making films.
Mm-hmm. That's how it is.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, like I said, it's your 20th anniversary of your Haven Acting Studio. Are you happy with what you've accomplished in the last 20 years?
I'm so grateful. I get emails all the time, almost every day I seem to get an email from somebody saying thank you for the studio, for what you do, for giving us a place to do what we do. So that's really meaningful to me, that I'm able to provide a place, and it's reciprocal. For me, every time I walk into the studio, I feel at home, and every time I see the students, they're kind of like an extended family to me. In some cases, I've been working with people for seriously 20 years, because acting is kind of different in England, right? But I think in England, people go to theater school.
Yeah.
They learn the craft, and they go out and do plays and work and find a career, hopefully. In North America, actors continue to go back to class.
Yeah.
And it's called scene study class. And actors go to class just to work, just to do, like people would go to a gym, just to build on their craft, to keep a community together. And also, maybe in England, more people do theater, so they get access to the great material. In North America, less people do theater, especially in Los Angeles or a place like Vancouver. A bit more theater in New York and Toronto. Well, a lot more in New York, certainly. But so if you want to do the good stuff, you got to do it in class. You're going to be doing the TV stuff to make your living. And if you're really lucky, you get on a show with great writing and great character arcs. But if you want to invest, if you like, great plays make great actors. You can only do so much. You can only, you can't polish a turd, right? So if the script is kind of a turd, there's only so much you can do with it. So yeah, really gratifying to be able to work with people through the arc of their careers. And I've had people in class who are, winning awards on Broadway in New York, and people who are certainly winning awards and leads in film and TV across North America. And then I have newer students I work with too, or some of my other teachers, my associates at the studio work with. And it's equally gratifying for me to see a beginner's eyes light up, and as they get a sense of their potential and their kind of value and what they have to say. That's really gratifying, because I remember it myself. I remember one of my first acting teachers looking at me after I put up this, I just mangled this monologue in one of my first acting classes. And I remember this teacher named Dean Reagan just kind of connecting with me for a second and just looking at me and giving me a little nod. And that meant the world to me, to be seen and to just feel, okay, this guy's telling me I can do this. There's a tradition of acting teachers being destructive, the old break them down and build them back up school of acting. And fortunately, it feels like those days are over.
Hopefully it is.
People don't accept that anymore. People don't accept abuse. Young people are too smart for that crap. And what I think is a really important thing is, how do we find the balance between being able to take criticism and being able to be open to learning from outside criticism, and also knowing when someone's agenda is their own and it has nothing to do with you. So for a young actor who may get a lot of abuse from a teacher, they can seriously take that on for their whole life, and it can destroy their life. That kind of trauma can destroy someone's confidence. And it's so sad that people don't know that they got to go, okay, this is this teacher's whole trip. They're just a narcissistic person, or they have a cruel streak. This has nothing to do with me. I got to find another teacher and move on. So they can think that way, but you also can't be precious and entitled, can you? You also have to be able to listen. So that balance, finding that balance, is really difficult. And most of us, we're not born with that skill to decipher between, criticism and cruelty. Patsy Rodenberg, who's an English teacher, a genius, brilliant woman. She's written books, The Second Circle, Presence. I got to study with her in New York, and I admire her greatly. She says, "Isn't it interesting that all Shakespearean plays are about the misuse of power, and
Oh.
so many of the people who teach them misuse their power?" And it's really important to me not to misuse power, because just by the nature of being a teacher, you're endowed with this power, right? People come and they look up to you and they want your approval.
Yeah,
So I love being able to have a safe place to do unsafe things. That's a quote from a American playwright, John Patrick Shanley. Theater is a safe place to do the unsafe things that need to be done. So over the years, the definition of what needs to be done has changed.
yeah.
10, 15 years ago, teachers would say, this needs to be done. You need to be broken down. You need to, genuinely bleed, hurt yourself. People thought you need to do certain things to be a good actor. And now people are looking at things a bit differently and going, what do we really need to do? So it's a fascinating world for me, I love it. I think I've always been, had that kind of teacher mentality, which is very reciprocal. You get back as much as you give when you're a good teacher.
Definitely. Speaking of which, I actually had a look through the alumni that's on your website, and I actually found two names that one is actually I'll say kind of important because I've actually had him on here before,
Hmm.
as in Bradley Stryker.
Hmm.
And there's another one who everyone will know, Star of Room, and actually to be seen in Little Mermaid very soon, Jacob Tremblay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Bradley Stryker is doing so well right now.
lovely guy. Be honest,
He's
lovely
so
guy.
he's great. He's great, and he's an example of somebody who doesn't have a big ego and comes to class because he loves the work. He loves acting. He loves the plays. He loves the collaboration. And he'd come to class, and he's also a teacher himself. He'd come to class and fill up a notebook every class. He'd just be writing down, I'm not sure, I assume he was writing down notes regarding the play and not like writing a letter to his grandmother, but he'd be just filling pages with notes. And I think he was, gathering information, right? Diligently gathering information because he cares, because he
How do you
wanted
get
to.
better?
That's right. And fun guy, and super talented and so driven. Bradley is nominated right now. There's an awards thing in our province of British Columbia called the
Yeah.
Leos. And Bradley this year is nominated for, I think, 4 Leos for
Wow.
acting and filmmaking. So, yeah, he's great. He's a shining example of the kind of actors who just continue to push themselves joyfully to get better at what they do. And then Jacob Tremblay, I acted in a movie called Wonder that did well. And I actually played the role of an acting teacher in that movie, which was pretty easy to do.
It's like
And
art.
Jacob,
It's like life imitating art and art imitating life,
it
isn't
was, it was fun. Well, I mean, when I walked into audition for it, trying to remember the director's name right now. As soon as I said the lines, I could see his eyes light up. And I could really see that he went, okay, I found my guy. There was just something right about that connection. It happens once in a while. It's not about always being a great actor. Sometimes it's just you're the right guy at the right time for the job. So getting into that situation was really fun. So Jacob was the lead in that movie, and then later, God, how did I can't remember who put me in touch with him, but I started coaching him on some of his films. And he plays leads. He's a young guy, but he's not a kid anymore. In Wonder, Jake was a little kid, and now he's growing into a young man, and he's very intuitive and very smart and very soulful, and just a good guy. Like the goodness of who he is as a person.
Yeah.
He brings that kind of natural integrity to his work. So yeah, it's great working with him. I'm sure I'll continue to do that as he moves forward. I think the last couple of films I worked on with him, I think should be coming out very soon. And it's just a matter of introducing some new ways of thinking to a young actor, because when somebody's a kid, they're working on intuition or they're working on mimicking. Somebody might say, do it this way. But then as somebody gets older, they have to start to learn to really think for themselves in
Yeah.
the clay, with a set of tools. So I've been really really grateful to work with them. So you interviewed both those guys?
I've interviewed Bradley, not yet Jacob, but everyone
Yeah.
does know Jacob Tremblay.
Yeah. Well, he's I think you're going to see a lot of that guy for the next 50 years or so.
I hope we do, mate. Because first time I saw him actually was in, I think it was 2015's Boom with Brie Larson.
That
Oh,
was an incredible film.
yeah. Me and my missus were sold on him at that when we watched it. We were like, oh
Yeah.
my God, he's so good.
That scene when we're going to do spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen the film, okay? But the scene when his mom tries to smuggle him out in the carpet,
Yeah.
that was one of the tensest, most exciting scenes I've ever seen in a film. Like the tension was incredible. I remember watching that scene and looking around the theater, and everyone in the theater had their hands over their face. Everyone in the theater was like, "Whoa." I could almost not stand to bear the
Yeah. It's
tension.
like, oh God, I really don't want to watch this.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, those are a couple of standout students for sure, but there's a lot of them.
But there's
Everybody.
a lot more, but those are the ones that I know most. And
Yeah,
like I said, Jacob Tremblay is probably well famous. So a lot of people will know who he is, and that
oh
now
yeah,
they also know where he came from.
big time. Do you know Brian J. Smith? He's been on some shows you'd know. He was on Stargate Universe, Sense 8.
Oh,
Um,
Sensei, Andrew Smith.
he was in the Matrix, the last Matrix movie.
Oh, and who
They
did
both,
he play in that last Matrix movie?
I can't remember, but he was, an essential player. But Brian is an American actor who, while he was in Vancouver shooting Stargate Universe, he wanted to keep working on his craft, and he came into class, and we did a bunch of work together, and he was great. And he's since gone on and been nominated for Tony Awards and Olivier Awards for his work on Broadway. So, people,
Uh,
it's great when
Tony
you,
Award.
yeah, it's great when you see people who can traverse genres, right? To
Hmm.
work in a fun sci-fi show and then also do the Tennessee Williams on stage on Broadway. It's pretty cool what people are capable of when they really let their ambition guide them.
Uh-huh. So obviously, this is Haven Studios' 20th anniversary. What would you like to happen in the next 20 years?
Good question. I mean, the next 20 years, I would like to continue to maintain control of my bodily functions. You know, that
Wouldn't
would
we
be
all,
great.
mate?
That would be great as I move into those later years. Um, the industry has changed so much. It's
Mm.
just it shockingly has changed over those 20 years. I'd just like to see, since I'm based in Vancouver, I would love to see Vancouver remain a place where actors can begin a solid career and in some cases even maintain a solid career as Vancouver as a base. Now actors audition by tape. In the old days, you'd go into the room and audition. So if you really wanted a career in Los Angeles, an international career, to a large degree, you had to be in the international center of Los Angeles. That was
Mm.
the big one in North America. But that's changing now because of taped auditions. They call them self tapes. Yeah. So I'd love to see people in Vancouver and at my studio maintain a desire to be great actors and not just to be TV actors or TV stars, but to actually learn the craft at a deep level. And I want to continue to facilitate that, get better at what I do. The way I can get better at what I do is primarily by understanding the plays at the deepest level as possible and being able to communicate what those stories are about. I'm already very confident as a teacher in guiding people emotionally and technically, but the real wisdom comes from understanding the stories on a deep level. That's how you truly guide, especially experienced actors. So I just want to get smarter and better. I want to keep having a thriving environment where people can do their work and stay authentic. I guess that's my overall goal. Not just since the studio is my home base, I want to continue to be authentic. I want to grow, but I want to be authentic. I don't want to try to be the next shiny object. The world we live in now with social media is very much about what's popular this moment, what's popular this second. And I'm really proud I've been able to keep the studio going strong for 20 years as the next generations come in. If I can keep it going and keep those people coming in, I believe I have a lot to offer them.
So how have you I know you've mainly kept away from gaming and animation, but would you consider doing gaming and animation in the future?
Doing it in what way? As a performer or as a
Former motion capture artist, voiceover.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's out of the question. I focus more on being behind the camera these days. I still, like I say, I acted in my most recent film, and I have something coming up. I'm acting in another film, but anything's possible. Certainly, animation voices, I'd love to do that. Motion capture, I don't think anybody needs me to do that. I guess if they were looking for a certain body type, but there's a lot of performers. I don't need to try to break into that world. I know people who do it, and they're experts at it.
Uh-huh.
Animation is an amazing field. It'd be great. I don't know what would be. I wonder what would be a good character for me in animation.
How about a
Uh,
villain?
what's that?
How about a villain?
I've played villains before. It's been a while, but I think to play like a funny villain, that would be great. There's a thing with animation in Vancouver. Everybody says, "Oh, I got to get into that. I got to get into that. I got to do that." All actors say that in Vancouver because there's money to be made. Not as much as there used to be. No actors make as much money as they used to in today's current climate, how things work financially and structurally in business. But all actors say they want to do it. And then as soon as you start doing it, you go, oh, the people who do this really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's not just like a kind of thing, yeah, I'm an actor, so I'll just go in and do it. People who tell that story are generally stars. So they'll say, hey, Ray Romano, come and play this cartoon character. So he just knows he's Ray Romano. So it's going to work great because they already know him. But people who are trying to break in will find that there's a lot of people ahead of them in the line. So you got to learn those skills to do voiceover. It takes a very specific skill set, and some people are amazing at it. I did do voiceover years ago. I remember once I was teaching an acting class, and a guy came in to watch. And then the next day, I got a phone call, and it was from that guy's company. And they said, yeah, what's his name? Murray wants you to come in and audition for this commercial. And I thought, oh, okay. And I went in and I saw the guy and I went, oh, you were the guy who was auditing class. He goes, yeah, I thought you had an interesting sound. You might want to come in. Here's the words for the commercial. I think it was, I had to say London drugs, everything you want under one roof. And I did that a few times. London drugs, everything you want under one roof.
Wow.
London drugs, everything you want under one roof. And he said, yeah, you have a nice kind of friendly quality to your voice. So I said London drugs, everything you want under one roof 3 or 4 times, got a phone call, I got the job. And I ended up doing about 4 or 5 commercials for that company, just kind of talking like this and just kind of being this nice, friendly guy. And I thought, this is easy. And then I went to about 50 more auditions and got nothing. And I went, okay, it's not so easy. Something connected on that part for that, with that guy. But then I learned if I want to do this, then I got to really learn how to handle the microphone and to use different parts of my voice and to use different characters and to understand the product, right? Like if you're going to do a beer commercial, you're not going to go, hey, come drink Coke and eat beer. It's a delicious beer that's not the guy. To do a beer commercial, you got to be the guy who's like kokanee. When you're out, you know what I mean? You got to understand those archetypes. So that's a long answer to your question. Would I do animation? Yes. Do I feel entitled to it? No. If I'm going to do animation, I'm going to have to really earn my spot.
Fair enough. Just before we move on to the quiz, have you got anything else coming up that we haven't talked about that you'd like to discuss, or anything personally aside from your studio you'd like to promote?
I'm editing my film, working with my editors Franco and Cindy, and I'm about to do an interesting part in a film that I guess I'm not supposed to talk about yet.
Oh, NDA, NDA. I know
I
all about
guess
NDAs.
it's
I've had
nothing, it's not. It's a very interesting film with a very interesting concept. And my wife Jennifer and I have created some shows that we're pitching. We're going out to people in Canada and the US with a show, and one of our attachments is George Takei, who you'd know.
Oh, I don't think there's anybody on this planet who doesn't know who George Takei is.
Yeah.
What a
So
guy.
George is connected to this show to play the grandfather, and we'll do our best to get that show through and see if we can get it into development and get it made. George is 85 years old and he's a marvel. He was just in England doing his show on stage in the for God knows how many. Like, I mean, he's out there at 85 years old
Still doing
doing
it.
8 shows a week, right, on stage. So yeah, we'll see what happens um, with that project. Plenty to keep me busy for sure, more than enough. I'd love to have some time off, but you got to really hustle, don't you? You got to keep hustling.
Yeah.
You can't kind of rest on any small or large laurels.
Definitely. Just before the last thing, have you got any social media?
I do. I have the Ben Immanuel at I guess it's the Ben Immanuel at Instagram, and I have Haven Acting Studio on Instagram, Haven Acting on Facebook. I always tell people just Google my name or Google Haven Acting Studio, and the stuff comes up. Uh,
Ah,
are you
yeah,
good at social media, or Dean? Are you good at maintaining a good social media account and doing all that stuff?
I have we've I've Finalcut's got its own producer and she does it for me. I believe that's yours, sir.
That's my personal one, and you can see a massive 766 followers because I don't get on there and hustle it. I got my hands full.
Hmm.
Um, but then look at Haven Acting Studio. That's all about our studio,
Already
what we
there.
do.
I'm already there, mate.
Yeah. So social media, that alluring yet deceitful mistress that so
Hmm.
many people kind of pursue, fall prey to. I don't know. I wish maybe sometime in my lifetime I'll learn to embrace social media and use it effectively and authentically. It's an ongoing journey.
It's a journey, but also a problem. I can't even say the word now. Pardon my French. But it's a problem where you also have to tread very carefully, which you shouldn't have to,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You
because the
mean in
minute,
terms of expressing thoughts, opinions?
yeah, because you'll say one thing and then everyone will turn it around.
Yeah,
It's the worst thing.
I don't want to have those kind of conversations. Like, I don't want to debate with people. Like, I got enough right in front of me to like
Yeah,
start debating with somebody on a different continent about some insignificant word choice or something. So
definitely.
I don't know. Listen, we know it's good and evil, right?
Hmm.
It's like, again, that was part of my understanding and tackling the subject of social media in my film
Yeah,
is if I was in my 20s and Instagram came out, I think I would have been very active. And I think I was playing music back then in a band, and I think I would have been promoting the band on Instagram instead of putting posters up, stapling posters to walls. I would have been on Instagram. And so I don't think we can say it's a bad thing. It's all about how you use it, right? It's just kind of like
definitely.
graffiti. You can put out, maybe that's why I like seeing that graffiti of Have Hope Yo on the wall, because somebody had made a positive, generous statement instead of just, writing something foul or writing their name. So it's all how you use it.
Hmm. Are you ready for the quiz that
Okay.
has made people cry, scratch their heads, and just basically have every single sort of puzzlement that has ever been existed into effect?
I want to experience all those emotions. Yes.
All right, then, in that case, depending on if you have kids or not, they will ask to see something with their dad in it. So, what would be the first thing of yours in your filmography that you would show them?
Well, I don't, my wife and I don't have kids. I feel like with acting students over the years, they feel kind of like, my kids in a way.
Mhm.
Uh, but if I was dealing with little kids, I've been in a movie called Magic in the Water.
Mm.
That was a really fun movie and got seen a lot. I remember some residual checks coming in for that movie that make you go, huh, people are still watching this. Magic in the Water was a fun kids film. Of course, Wonder that I was in with Julia Roberts and Owen Wilson and Jacob Tremblay himself is a great film for kids, probably 8, 10 and up, with a great message about acceptance and fitting in. Everyone trying to fit in. Those would be the two kids films that stand out. That's one from the beginning when I started acting, Magic in the Water, and one from not that long ago. Good Boy was a film I was in about dogs from outer space. And that was a really fun film. And who doesn't love dogs in movies, right? Those would be a few.
Yeah, fair enough then. Can't argue with that. What would be the one thing that you have learned in either training for a role or learned through being an acting teacher that you will still use in everyday life?
I think that on a deep level, it's about something we talked about earlier. It's about understanding the difference between taking criticism and taking abuse. And don't let people tell you who you are when you're young and tell you what you are or are not capable of. You got to really find that discerning ear to be able to listen to what helps and shut out what doesn't. And I don't know any other way to learn that other than therapy, reading certain books on the subject. We're just all really susceptible to opinions of others, and it can be really destructive. So I've learned not to get caught up in other people's opinions and just to kind of form your own identity while still taking in the good stuff. That's a really fine line. There's no perfect recipe for that. But that's been a big one for me. I think that people's parents can say certain things and set them up for life in a negative way.
Mhm.
And you got to learn how to discern that stuff. Uh, so that's some hard earned advice for me. The other thing is no matter how long you do something as an actor, you're never going to have all the answers. You just get more comfortable not knowing.
Mm.
The longer I've been an actor, the more I've realized, oh yeah, I don't have to know everything. And that's okay. I can work from a place of not knowing. And young actors tend to focus on what they don't know, and that gives them anxiety. But yeah, don't worry, you'll never know. You'll have a set of tools, a set of skills, experience, characters that you've created that you can draw from, but you just got to be okay not knowing and trust that everything will be fine.
Mhm. Sound advice.
Mhm.
Definitely sound advice. All right, then. You have offers to star in four. In fact, we'll use the premise for your new movie. So it's a documentary. So we'll say four music style documentaries. Who do you say yes to, and which three do you reject? There has been a little bit of a change from the list I sent you, so
Okay.
don't be too alarmed.
Okay.
First one, obviously, is Beyonce.
Hmm.
The second one is Harry Styles. The third one is Taylor Swift. The very last one, I was choosing between this guy and Avril Lavigne, and I thought, well, hold on a minute. This one, there's one person in Canada who is an absolute legend amongst all of us, Brian Adams.
Well, I guess I would say Brian Adams
There we
because
go.
because ironically, I tell you, when I was 19 years old, I played in a band called El Kabong that was named after a cartoon. There was a Hanna-Barbera cartoon called El Kabong. And that was about a guy named Quick Draw McGraw, and his alter ego was El Kabong. And El Kabong was this horse that would whack people over the head with his guitar. And when he did, he'd say El Kabong, right? So that's what we named our band, and we played in the Pacific Coliseum here with Bryan Adams.
Really?
We were 19 years old, and we suddenly were on stage in front of 17,000 people opening for Bryan Adams. So he'll always have a special place in my heart. That was one of those things that you look back on and just go, I'm glad I got to do that. That was like being blasted to the moon. That was like a really incredible experience. And I have visceral memories of that night of not only our band being on stage, but I really remember hearing Bryan Adams and watching him. And even though, I was into a slightly different kind of music than Bryan Adams, I just like really remember the way those songs resonated throughout that, huge space. It really did feel like he was singing to everyone, It felt like he was singing his songs for every single person in there. So, yeah, I'm going with Bryan, of course.
I tell you what. There's one. I did go and see Taylor Swift about 4 or 5 years ago. The one I didn't actually. What it was, I actually found out that when she went to Toronto, she actually duetted with Bryan Adams on stage. I was like, I'm so jealous. I mean, no offense. All I got was Niall from One Direction. I'm like, I don't think everyone under the age of 18 wants him. Everyone over the age of 18 wants Bryan Adams.
Well, those songs last, right? Bryan Adams, his best songs will last for many, many years. It's sad that we lost Tina Turner, but she did that great duet, right, with Bryan Adams. What was it? It's Only Love, I think was the song.
I think I missed that. I know Tina's done a few duets as Bryan Adams. I didn't realize they did a duet together, to be honest.
Yeah, check it out. I believe the song's called It's Only Love. Great song that was written. I believe he wrote it specifically to duet with her. I actually had dinner with a friend last night who was talking about that when Tina Turner came to Vancouver and played at the Coliseum. She and Bryan did that duet. And, they did it live in front of an audience. So, yeah, there's your answer.
Mm-hmm. It's not really been a great week because Tina Turner died last night. Ray Stevenson died earlier in the week, which was a complete and utter shock.
Mm. Well, at least Tina, how old was Ray Stevenson? Tina was 88. Okay. So, that's not, that's not nothing, right? That's a pretty good life.
Mm. They still had so much to give.
Yeah.
That was the problem. I think that was the problem. I was absolutely mortified when I found out he wasn't here anymore. I genuinely was.
Yeah, I know. It's a good reminder, right? Seize the day and all that, isn't it? You
never know when your number's up.
You sure don't.
So for you, what are the 3 projects that are your dream?
The 3 projects?
That literally you've dreamed about since you were a boy that you
want. Dream projects. What are the dream projects?
Yeah. I actually have a few if you want to know.
Please.
I don't know if you know about Death Road in Bolivia. You probably don't, but I'll tell you what it is anyway. Well, let's put it this way. I would consider Death Road as to be the one road that I would never go to, and I would only use it if I necessarily had to. We're talking about what the road is so now you can't even really fit 2 cars on it on some parts.
Okay. Does it go through the mountains?
It does.
I think I've heard of it or seen footage. Yeah.
I would actually like to make I know it's not going to say a dream, but I have really thought about this in the last couple of days. I wouldn't actually mind making not so much a Fast and Furious style movie about Death Road, but I'd like to make like an action movie with Death Road in it. It would be a mixture of Fast and Furious and Dune, if that makes any sense.
Oh, that sounds cool. That sounds like it would be quite a feat to be able to shoot that because, where would you put the camera? Where do you put the crew?
I would actually follow Steven Spielberg's inspiration for Dune, to be honest.
And
Having mainly in the car and helicopters, and that would be about it.
Or drones, right? Now
Oh yeah,
everybody
definitely. You can have
uses
drones.
drones instead of helicopters, which is a much more cost-effective way of doing that.
Uh,
Interesting.
yeah, I've actually, I'm only going to say two because I don't want to give everything that I like away.
Mhm.
I've actually had in my mind for a few years a science fiction horror story. Funny enough, you actually mentioned what the base part of it is when you were like, I believe you said something along the lines of you have to get back to Earth. Well, it's kind of like that.
Hmm.
Only
Hmm.
only the story is about two brothers,
Hmm.
and that's just basically putting it out there. I can't really say anything else about it because that would give
Hmm.
away everything.
Hmm.
But I have actually incorporated a lot of not so much graphic deaths, but stuff that would make 15-year-olds throw the popcorn out the seats. And I would actually base it a lot, not so much a lot of it, but I would actually have the formula from Paul Anderson's Event Horizon in a lot of it. Event
Hmm.
Horizon's best science fiction horror movie ever made. I do not care what anyone says.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, you are missing out, sir.
Hmm.
Oh,
What do you say? Something Horizon? What is it?
Event Horizon. It's got
Mhm.
Lawrence Fishburne and Sam Neill in it.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
I think it's on Netflix over here
Yeah.
or Amazon. It's one over here. I can't remember which one it is, but I have seen it
Yeah.
somewhere. It's
Hmm.
only about an hour and a half long,
Okay.
but I absolutely think it's one of the best science fiction horrors ever. And by the way, it's actually better than the Faculty, which was Robert Rodriguez's one. I would consider this even worse simply
Okay.
because in one part, Sam Neill actually takes his own eyeballs out.
Oh, okay, that's a new one. Yeah.
Yeah. And what makes it even worse is it's just the sound of when he takes his eyeballs out. It's like, oh,
Didn't Hannibal Lecter take his own brain out or somebody else's brain or something? That seems to be a famous scene from one of the Hannibal stories.
I think Hannibal Lecter bit someone's cheek off, ripped someone's
Definitely did
face
that.
off.
Thought there was a scene of taking out someone's brain while they were still alive or something.
Was that
Whenever,
Hannibal, maybe?
maybe, yeah, yeah. Well, so you got some projects to do. Have you written scripts?
First one, no, because I've only literally come up with. The second one, I've been doing Ed Newmeyer and just been doing it bit by bit and coming back to
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. Well, it's very satisfying to get to the end, you know? It's a like I find screenwriting the hardest part is just sitting down every day and starting. And once you do that, my experience is once you do that, you'll get there. But it's hard, right? It takes a tremendous amount of fortitude and discipline to get through it. But
Mm.
those sound like you're hooked into some things that if they're intriguing and compelling to you, then
Yeah.
that's where you got to start, right?
Mm. There is actually something behind it. It's kind of like how basically two brothers are family, but you wouldn't think that because I kind of base it on sort of like family life and I'll say a racing driver relationship because I don't know if you know F1 that much, but there has been F1 drivers who have been teammates, have been friends, but have ended up being mortal enemies.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I kind
know.
of decided to mix the brotherly. I kind of did mix a bit of brotherly love and kind of like say F1 teammates that have gone from loving each other to hating each other. Only this is a lot worse because I don't ever remember Ayrton Senna or Nico Rosberg threatening to kill someone's crew.
It's an exciting environment to set a story, isn't it?
Yeah. Speaking of which, hold on a minute. When did Lewis Hamilton said once in an interview that in 10 years he would write a book about what happened when he changed his and Nico Rosberg's pit crew, and that was actually hold on a minute. When did he say it was? 2018. I think he's got about 3 years left to write that book.
Okay.
Because he did actually go on an interview. I'll send you a link for it on when I find it on YouTube. But he did actually say he's got about at the time about another 6 years to write it, which I think has turned into 3 years.
Yeah.
That is the
Interesting.
book. That is the book that every F1 fan wants, aside from Drive to Survive.
Interesting.
Yeah. So That's my. I'll say, I know that's only two, but that's all I can come up with on
Yeah,
the.
those are good.
So, what have you got any projects that you've wanted to do or want to do?
Well, I certainly want to do the project with my wife Jen and George Takei. We'll see if that goes through. I have a film that I made a short film called Ganji about a boxer with pugilistic dementia, which
Hmm.
boxers, head injuries. And that was sort of inspired by a time I got to meet Muhammad Ali, which is a whole other story.
I think
Uh,
that is a whole other story. So,
yeah. Um, so I want to do the boxing movie Ganji. I want to do the story with my wife Jen, and I have a play that I'm writing called Tito. That is a very compelling story to me. It'll be very challenging because I would love to get that done in the next couple of years. So those are three projects that are in my upcoming future. But right now, I got to go all in and really focus on the feature I'm editing right now and just stay in that world and really focus on those characters. And I have a tendency to get interested in too many things at once, you know?
yeah, I have that problem as well.
I don't know if I'm ADD. I certainly haven't been diagnosed with that, but I do know that, sometimes I'll be listening to a podcast, checking my email, and having a conversation with my wife at the same time. And she'll say, "Will you please listen to me?" And then I'll repeat back everything she just said for the past 2 minutes. So I can multitask, but I don't think it's the most effective way to work. So
Yeah,
I think let's just say I'm going to stick with my next feature and focus on that.
which is what you should do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, last two questions. It is. I have actually got a question down here. Usually, what I do is I ask the guest to name a director that they want to work with to the point where you would choose them over anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually be more inclined to say, name me anyone associated with the film or TV industry you want to work with to the point you would choose them over anyone or anything else. Just to give you a taster, I would happily turn down anyone, anything, no matter who it is, Taika Waititi, Kevin Feige, anyone, to work with Chris Nolan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he's certainly absolutely unique universe unto himself as a
Mm-hmm.
filmmaker.
He is
Um,
an anomaly in the
yeah, yeah,
world of movies.
absolutely, a true innovator, true pioneer. Um, for me, I guess most actors, certainly of my generation, we all want to work with Martin Scorsese.
Oh, Scorsese.
Hmm. Yeah, there's an actress, an American actress named Jenna Rollins. Jenna must be, oh, she must be
Oh,
so.
I think I know who that is actually.
She's I think the greatest ever. Would love to work with her. I don't know what she's doing right now. She's, getting to be up there. She's probably in her 80s now, at least. Jenna Rollins goes back to the 70s. She made incredible films with her husband, John Cassavetes. But yeah, I'd like to work with who doesn't, I mean, who from my generation, I want to work with Al Pacino. I want to mix it up with Al Pacino, play his little brother or his son. I guess I could play he's old enough, I could play his son. Yeah, the heroes I grow up with, I'd love to work with them. In the sort of independent film world, Noah Baumbach, who makes these great independent films. The Squid and the Whale was the first one that really jumped out to me. So I'd like to work with the big superstars like Pacino and Scorsese, and I'd like to work with the sort of indie champions like Noah Baumbach. Um, I don't know. I just want to work with people where we're on the same page. I've been doing this so long that I'm not concerned about sort of stars and fame and status. I'm more concerned about making genuine, authentic, creative connections with people.
Yeah. Just so you know, if you want to work with Scorsese, you must be prepared to have Leo DiCaprio in your film.
He's fantastic. Come on, who's like he's one of the new guys, right? Like if I grew up on Pacino and De Niro and Hoffman as one of the greats, DiCaprio is fantastic. He speaks to the human condition.
And he
That
doesn't
guy.
really age as well, does he?
That's true. It might. I wonder if it has anything to do with his lifestyle. I don't know. He seems to I don't know the man personally, so I can't say, but he seems to balance out really, really hard work and dedication to his craft with having a good time.
Yep.
He's not afraid to have a good time, that guy. Sometimes those people who like to have a good time and party let it go too far and it takes them down, but he seems
Yeah,
to be going strong.
definitely does. Henry Cavill was the same as well, because Henry Cavill was quoted a couple of weeks ago saying he would rather stay in and watch and play video games than go out, which,
Yeah.
funny enough, is what I would rather do.
Yeah, it's a fine line, isn't it? It's a fine line. I remember, back to what we were talking about COVID. I know somebody, a business guy who works at sort of high level in the business world, and he said he liked COVID. He liked the whole pandemic because he just stayed home and he didn't have to go to meetings and he didn't have to go to dinners and he didn't have to
Never
uh,
written, and he didn't have to bring his work home with him either.
he just didn't have to deal with people. And he said the only thing he had to worry about was the end of the world. And he said he liked worrying about the end of the world more than he liked worrying about his next dinner meeting.
Oh,
So
bless him.
we got to stay human, don't we? We got to
Mm,
stay human and get out and stay connected. God
yeah.
knows what AI is going to do to us next.
Oh, don't get me started with AI.
I'm admittedly kind of nervous about that. We're not going to be able to. People are going to be writing novels and screenplays, and they probably already are. And
Michael Crichton. May I recommend Westworld and what was it one? The Andromeda Strain.
yeah, classics.
Yeah, and also I've seen T2 too many times to think that there will be a real life Judgment Day someday, and the human
Scary.
race will always be its own undoing.
You said it. You
Mm.
said it.
I'm not afraid to say it as well because that's what I fear most of all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we got to enjoy it while we can, right?
Yeah, you got to enjoy paradise while it lasts. Although, if it comes to a case, make a few dead zones here and there, so no technology can come through.
I
That's
like
what I
to
do.
that.
Last question. This is actually a sort of newer one that I've recently sort of started asking.
Mhm.
Because obviously you get every day, week, month, year, you get asked tons of questions. So this is actually a two-parter. What is the one question you wished you were asked more? What is the one question you wished you were asked less or not at all? And there is actually a third option. Have I actually said anything today that fits into one or either of those two parters?
Well, I think it's a net, we can't be so entitled to think that we're going to like everything that we're asked of. We're
That
privileged
is true.
to have an opportunity to speak about what we do and to have any audience. So if people ask a question that isn't my favorite, uh, I know certainly no judgment from me. If people say to an actor, "So what are you up to? What are you doing now?" And if an
Yeah.
actor is working on a show, they're going to love answering that question, right? If you ask an actor, "What are you up to now?" and they haven't worked for 6 months, they're going to hate answering that
Yeah.
question, right? So it's not up to the interviewer to intentionally avoid triggering somebody's insecurity, right? I
Mm.
think that if people want to ask questions about trivia, who are you dating? What did you have for breakfast? I think sometimes people don't like talking about that stuff, but it also can be really fun to talk about silly things. So I don't know. I'm not worried about being asked really anything. I think you just kind of got to know your crowd and know what kind of podcast it is. What you seem to be doing is a combination of really talking about industry stuff and also having some fun. So I'm comfortable with that for sure, 100%. I think a question I'd like to be asked more. I like the question these days about what have you learned and what would you like to share, or the question, if you could go back and talk to yourself when you were younger, what would you tell yourself? Because that's the stage where I'm at in my life.
I'm going to put
So
that in the next round of questions. There you go.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think we just did it, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that. I think it really depends on how old someone is. Somebody in their 20s, what are your dreams for the future? They're happy to talk about that. Someone like me in their 50s, what have you learned from the past? Very comfortable talking about that, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm pretty open. That's my whole life is about open communication. That's certainly what acting classes are about. There's no small talk in an acting class. Somebody walks in the door and you go, "How you doing?" And they go, "Pretty good." And you go, "Yeah, what's up?" And they go, "Oh, I don't know. You know what I mean?" Like nobody just goes, "Great. How's the weather? How are you?" Like there's just no small talk. I love a world with as little small talk as possible, but I respect and recognize that small talk is a way of getting things started, right? We
Mhm.
just can't jump right into a heavy conversation or a deep conversation. So, yeah, I love what you're doing with your questions and your conversational style. I think you're covering a lot of bases.
Most appreciated. Always is. It's always nice to know that I'm actually doing a podcaster's job properly and not infuriating the guest, which is probably the one thing I never want to do.
No, you can't control that, right? People come in with their
Yeah.
own, they come in with their own day. You never know what kind of day somebody's having, right?
You don't know how they're feeling, what they've done, any kind of
Mhm.
like, oh my God, what's going on here?
How
Right.
tired they are.
I'll just grit my teeth and just smile
Hmm.
like that. Seriously, Ben, it's been such an honor. I kind of feel this interview has been along the lines of a Bill Sadler, if you like, just because I've been so regaled with everything. I think the interview kind of went out the window after about the first question, but I've really enjoyed it. I genuinely have.
Good, good. I'm glad. Me too. It's nice to meet you, and I hope that your ideas that you're talking about for your projects. I wish you well with that, and enjoy the 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 highs and lows and the victories and the punishment of that creative process.
Not to
Enjoy
mention
it all.
not to mention the emotional turmoil as well.
Absolutely, it's all part of it.
So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, Ben Immanuel,
Thanks very much, Dean. Take care.
you too, mate.